This is the Alembic Files, and we're going to do part 1 and 2 with the return of Ronald Lee Claxton to talk about his newest series, We Are the Gemini.
I'll get started. Those towers, those twin Gemini towers that stood and then fell in 2001, for astrological and numerological reasons, I see how they were meant to be brought down, which I began to call them the Gemini towers, and I see some deep symbolic reasons why those towers represent us as men and women. Those twin towers represent us, and that's what I'm here to, mainly this evening, that's what I'm here to point out.
Let me ask you this, for those who have not gone back with us. There was something extremely spiritual, whether people want to believe it or not, with what took place that day, to include the symbology embodied by Rockefeller's North and South Tower, correct or not?
Yes, just go check out your show with William Ramsey. That helps set you off in that direction, certainly.
Which one would that be? Do you remember?
Well, you got a recent one, I think, back from April on the Alembic Files back in April.
Okay, I'll take a look. No problem.
And his older work too. Of course, I've read his book as well, Aleister Crowley, 9/11, and the New World Order. And those 4 flight numbers that we're told were involved, that's straight from Aleister Crowley.
All right, and that would be 11, I guess, 175,
yep.
77, and 93.
Yep, and I have, certainly for 77, and certainly for Flight 77 in the Pentagon, and certainly for what I call Armstrong and Aldrin, or American Airlines Flight 11, I have, there's much more of a story there than I've ever heard pointed out. We don't necessarily have to get to that tonight because it'd be a little bit of sidetracking, but still, there's a whole lot of there's a lot more going on than just the financial maneuverings of people who want to. There's a whole lot more going on there than just the geopolitical maneuverings of people who want to make money, and dominate the world.
And we know that, and it is true. We don't want to go on that sidebar, but we don't know where people are going to come to as their orientation to what we're going to talk about if they get here at all.
I think that every one of us who's going to listen to this, I think our entire lives, from the time we were born until that moment, until September 2001, our entire lives was leading to that. I'm not going to. Those are my thoughts. I don't.
Okay.
It's completely changed my understanding of what's going on this planet.
But that's kind of like the thesis, and you're going to show us how we'll get there. Is that true?
Yeah, what I would like to do this evening is explain what I mean by We Are the Gemini, by the title of this first show, the title of this series.
Okay.
Okay, I'll quickly say that as far as the main method I've used to find this out is just astronomy software, and I can't make the astronomy software say what I wanted to say 2,000 years ago and then still be accurate for what's in the sky right now. Well, I can't really distinguish for you in a quick way what's the exact distinction between astronomy and astrology, because they do get blurred.
Right.
But I'm not an astrologer. I'm not a practicing professional or an amateur astrologer. But I see a pattern that keeps recurring with Jupiter and Gemini, and it has led to a completely different outlook of my life on what this life is all about, what's going on. And I'm not an astrologer, professional or amateur. I came from this as an outsider, but I do believe I know some of the real astrology. I mean, I don't have it all. I haven't cracked the entire code, probably never will. But I do know some of the aristocratic elitist code that's being used to time certain events that are related, and they all led to September 2001 with Jupiter and Gemini, and they may be leading to right now, between now and next summer, with Jupiter back in Gemini. So it's very timely. The people Lyman and Montgomery warned us about, they believe in it and they act on it. So it is important to us because it affects our lives, because we are subject to the malevolence of people who despise us, and that's just a fact of life. If someone can't deal with that, then they might as well stop listening.
All right, but our point is to the listeners, especially those who may be new. It's like, don't get all bent out of shape that we're talking about what might be considered astrology, because no matter what, but there are things that happen in this world that are beyond that we should be wary of? And would it not be sufficient to say that we should not be guided by this, but we should be aware necessarily of Satan's motivations and movements according to astrological benchmarks?
But the interesting thing here is that both sides in this spiritual fight we are part of, we're in the middle of, both sides have used signs in the sky as messages or signposts to mark events that are going to be happening down here on this planet. So both sides are. It's a complete spiritual war that I see being shown to us up in the sky as certain things happen. I'll start with an important fact that really might as well start with probably the most important fact here, is that Ernest Martin, publishes his findings from the late 70s throughout the 80s and then on to the 90s, but in the early 90s, before 2001, which is very important, he publishes his findings that Jesus was born on the Gregorian date of September 11th in the year 3 BC. So, September 11th. All right. It's very interesting.
And also, I'll put a link up for that because people can read that for themselves because that book is also available online, correct?
Yes, AskElm.com. Well, as far as I know, it still is. Well, I've got a second edition, 96. Well, mid-early 90s. So
it happened definitely before 2001.
Yes, and nobody can say that. Well, nobody can honestly say that it's just someone looking to sensationalize the issue. So, right. And I'll quickly point out the astronomical information he used came from the Bible. He did also use. He was also what you could also call a historical, biblical scholar, I suppose you could say, and he had some information about the death of Herod the Great, and that helped him identify the year 3 BC. So it was some historical information, but the astronomical information was from Revelation, and then he used information about John the Baptist from the book of Luke, and that helped him narrow in on September 11th, 3 BC, and it was the position of the moon at the foot of Virgo on that evening of September 11th, 3 BC that is very key to what we will eventually be discussing, but won't be there this evening. So I guess we got that out of the way because that's probably the most important thing to mention first.
Agreed.
And, well, now we need to discuss Jupiter and Mars because I noticed something very interesting in the movie The Patriot. Given that John Valentini had pointed out, you had talked to him before at some point in the past, given that he had pointed out male 9 pounds, 11 ounces Gibson at the beginning of the movie weighing a rocking chair, and then he mentions it's 9 pounds, 11 ounces. That's perfect. So that was that movie was released in 2000. Well, given that, this is prior to 2001, Mel Gibson mentioning 9 pounds, 11 ounces, you could, okay, forget it, who cares? But then I noticed the matching astrology that goes with that because when Martin goes to see Cornwallis, it's no accident that Cornwallis's 2 dogs are named Jupiter and Mars, and that's where we're picking up here because Jupiter and Mars is Jupiter and Gemini, Mars and Sagittarius. That's the main. That is the main. From what I see, going all the way back to what would be the birth of John the Baptist.
What is key that Gibson weighs the chair and he says 9/11, meaning 9 pounds 11 ounces. He says perfect. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. But later in the movie, Cornwallis summons his 2 dogs, and their names are
Jupiter and Mars.
And all right, now let's break it down again. Why is that key in the whole structure of what we're talking about?
Because I looked it up and I knew that was important, and I looked it up, and Jupiter is in Gemini. Jupiter was in Gemini, so you got to ask yourself. Well, Gemini is interesting because of the towers, the 9/11 reference, and then Gemini and the Gemini towers, the twin towers, and then Jupiter. Oh, that's something I forgot to mention about Martin. He mentions Jesus is born on September 11th, but the Jupiter because of where Jupiter would have been in the sky and what it was doing. Jupiter, Martin reasons, is the star of Bethlehem. Jupiter, the planet itself, is the star of Bethlehem, the wandering star. So in this context, Jupiter being in Gemini, now you've got the twin towers, the Gemini towers, associated in this context with Jesus Christ because of Martin's work. And okay, so Jupiter and Mars. Jupiter was in Gemini in September of 2001. But Mars was in Sagittarius. And so Sagittarius is a centaur, an archer, a hybrid being. The Gemini are not portrayed as hybrids. They're usually portrayed as I usually see them as portrayed as two men, or two twin males or something like that. But I suppose just two twin males, but they're not hybrids. And Sagittarius is a hybrid being. It's a centaur, a half horse, half human hybrid. And that's one of the movies Valentini pointed out. You have an obvious 9/11 reference, and then you have the Jupiter and Mars thrown in there. Valentini also pointed out another movie, Face Off, a few years prior to 2001, where somebody's reading a letter, and on the top of the letter you see the date September 11th, 1997, maybe September 11th. And so in that movie, I found the same astrology. But this time it wasn't Jupiter and Mars, but it was Gemini and Sagittarius, because the bad guys in that movie were Castor and Pollux Troy, and Castor and Pollux are the two primary star systems of Gemini. The good guy was FBI agent Sean Archer, so that's a Sagittarius reference, Sagittarius the Archer.
All right, let's back that up a little bit. Talking about who the first two principals were, what are their names in the movie?
The bad guys in Face Off are Castor and Pollux. Well, I guess there's more, but there are two of the bad guys. Castor and Pollux Troy. I don't remember much about the movie, but Castor and Pollux Troy are bad guys.
All right, and say it slowly.
Castor, Castor and Pollux, Pollux. They're the two primary stars you see. They're like star systems, but the two bright spots you see in Gemini, that's Castor and Pollux.
So you saying those characters' names in the movies bear that spelling?
Yeah, that's a direct reference to Gemini. Yes, they're spelled that way, and it's a direct reference to Gemini. So
what you're saying is they could not have that spelling if it wasn't understood what was going on here.
Yeah, I mean, you've got people who know what's going to happen, and they're mocking us, they're laughing at us, but they're also signaling to each other, or just like you say, winking and nodding at each other at our expense, because we're too dumbed down mentally and physically to know what in the world's going on in this world.
But in a case like this, also, for those of us who are kind of aware, I would never have picked up on that had not, yourself or Valentini had done that. So when we look at something like this, it's a situation where folks like yourself are saying, hey, look, take a look at this, and do we think it's actually accidental? Is that correct?
Yeah. To me, it's certainly not accidental, because you've got where they put a 9/11, either visually or they say it, there's some visual or audio, auditory, there's some visual or auditory 9/11 reference, and then when the astrology that matches, when the astrology that I've noticed is there with it, Jupiter and Gemini and Mars and Sagittarius, or some kind of Jupiter and Mars, some kind of Mars and Sagittarius reference, or even the Archer reference itself, that's putting that together is not accidental. When you go back to the Patriot, you've got 9 pounds 11 ounces, you've got Jupiter and Mars, and then right after Jupiter and Mars, right after Cornwallis sees his two dogs, Benjamin Martin, Mel Gibson, and Cornwallis, they go sit down, they discuss the grievances that they both have. And Cornwallis states his grievance, and then Martin wants to go into the issue of prisoner exchange. And Cornwallis says, we have 18 common criminals under sentence of death, but we hold no prisoners of war. And Martin says, well, if that is your position, then 18 of your officers will have to die. 19 if you hang me as well. So right there, am I getting carried away? Am I too fast or something?
No, well, too fast perhaps, but not carried away. So let me just stop you, and that's the reason I'm going to do it. Because we don't want to lose anybody who thinks, well, there's something going on here, and you would, in fact, be right. We do understand that the news and the record will tell us, the historical newspaper record will tell us that 19 Arab hijackers supposedly pulled off 9/11 on 4 planes. Whether you believe that or not, okay, but you're saying right now that the usage of 19 in this particular reference to Patriot in the Patriot movie is key. Is that right?
That's very key. The date was there, 9 pounds 11 ounces.
That's 9/11. Okay.
The primary astrology, Jupiter, Mars. The number of hijackers we're told, 19 British officers. So that's three instances of foreshadowing.
Okay.
And Valentini pointed out so many more, and I've noticed some of the astrology in them. And
let me bring you back to that whole thing with the movie The Patriot. Where do you get Jupiter and Mars in that?
Because that's the name of Cornwallis's two dogs. He's so happy to see them.
All right, so you got them involved in that too. Okay, all right.
The two dogs, Jupiter and Mars. And so, September 2001, Jupiter was in Gemini, Mars was in Sagittarius. Well, I knew about Martin's work. I knew that Martin pointed out, and it's because of the position of the new moon at the foot of Virgo that Jesus was born, September 11th of the year 3 BC, the Gregorian calendar. I knew he pointed out that Jupiter was the star of Bethlehem. And so, that's very interesting. The Gemini, the twins, the twin towers, Jupiter in Gemini, and I've come across this, I forgot where I read it, but there's this, in the Western system, there is some concept that Jupiter is in detriment when in Gemini. Jupiter is in danger, Jupiter is in harm's way when in Gemini. But the exact quote was, Jupiter is in detriment when in Gemini. And then it goes on, what I read went on to give this stupid, ridiculous, nonsense, gobbledygook astrology stuff. So there was something really, really very important thrown in with all the rest of the nonsense, mixing good information with bad information, a familiar tactic. But, so that takes care of, there's Jupiter and Mars, Jupiter and Gemini, and I knew that Mars, I looked up and saw that Mars was in Sagittarius, and this antagonism hit me, that the Centaur-Archer hybrid attacking the Gemini, and Gemini, the constellation Gemini was paired with Jupiter, and to me, that struck me as an obvious connection between the Messiah, between Jesus, the Messiah, in this context, Jupiter. It struck me as an obvious connection between the towers and the 9/11 and Jesus, given Martin's work, and that's key here is Martin's work. Otherwise, I don't see how it would ever mean anything to me.
All right, but going back to the Archer, why is that important, the whole scenario? Again, because people have not, come upon this until
now.
Well,
there's a lot of Archer foreshadowing leading up. FBI agent Sean Archer is one of them. The Sagittarius reference in Face Off, that's one of them. There were a lot of Archer references leading up to Sandy Hook, but that's a separate issue. But I've seen, just like the Gemini references I've seen, Jupiter references, just like that, I've seen a lot of Mars and Sagittarius references. I mean, one of the movies I noticed on my own was Alien Resurrection, released in late '97, November, December '97. There is a visual Jupiter and Gemini reference because the ship is called the United Systems Military Auriga, and you see the ship come. There's been an accident in space. Not an accident, but there's been a major incident in space. It's more than an accident. It's pretty much the end of the world on that ship. The aliens are loose and they're going crazy. Well, you see the ship automatically redirects itself back toward the planet Earth. Here comes the Auriga, and you see the ship on screen come cruising past the planet Jupiter. And off behind the ship and behind Jupiter, you see the two prominent stars, and it's shaped just like Gemini. So there's a Jupiter and Gemini reference. And I looked it up, and I remember that in December of 2007, or 1997, Mars is in Sagittarius, what I remember seeing. So there's another Jupiter and Gemini, Mars and Sagittarius reference. All this foreshadowing that probably even goes all the way back to the 60s in the famous song, The Fifth Dimension, when the moon is in the 7th house,
yep,
and Jupiter aligns with Mars. Well, in September of 2001, Jupiter did align with Mars in the correct way. Jupiter was in Gemini, Mars was in Sagittarius. So how is that related to Ernest Martin? Well, given what Ernest Martin pointed out, Jesus being born on the 11th of September in the year 3 BC, Jupiter being the star of Bethlehem, I decided to look, John the Baptist would have been born 6 months earlier. I decided to look, there might be something there, but if there's not, it doesn't matter. But there is something there. 6 months before, in early March 3 BC, 6 months before Jesus was born, when John the Baptist would have been born, Jupiter was in Gemini, Mars was in Sagittarius, and, that matches September 2001. But not only that, in early March 3 BC, when it looks like John the Baptist would have been born, Mercury, the messenger planet, was beginning to make its way through Aries the Ram. And, John the Baptist as the messenger for Jesus, the messenger for the Messiah, it's as if John the Baptist was, I take it as a signifying that the messenger is here and telling you that the Messiah will be here as well. But the messenger, Mercury the messenger, making its way through Aries the Ram when John the Baptist would have been born. Behold the Lamb of God. Aries the ram, a lamb is a young ram. I don't see how all this is accidental.
Or coincidence, but what you're saying too is, and I mean, I bear witness to this, that John the Baptist, as I think we would say, was the last Old Testament prophet, in the sense that he paved the way. He made the path straight for Jesus Christ, who would follow him. And so, what you've said in relation to the birth and appearance of John the Baptist in relation to the birth of Christ, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, Jesus and Jesus' messenger is directly related to the astronomical configurations in the sky at the time. Directly match the basic astronomical configuration in the sky of September 2001 that was foreshadowed many, many times beforehand.
And it was understood that, eventually it was understood clearly what happened, and that was John the Baptist was not the Christ, but the one who would foretell and make straight the path of Jesus, correct?
Yes, a messenger, right. And that's why...
Right. Messenger, right.
That's one of the... we don't need to get too far afield of this, but that's one of the reasons, with Mercury there being the messenger, that's one of the reasons that leads directly to John Ackerman's work, is he explains how the planet Mercury became known as the messenger. And what's very important, too, that I've only gone back to 2,000 years ago, because as far as I can tell, only what I call the Ackerman planets are involved, the visible planets, Mercury, Venus, our moon, our sun, but Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. As far as I can tell, with what I call the real astrology related to September 2001, only the visible planets are involved.
All right, you mentioned John Ackerman. Again, people who are going to be new to come into this are going to have no clue about John Ackerman. So at this point also...
Maybe I should have mentioned it.
Mention it, and and again, the websites, if you can, to where they can study what he's unearthed as well. Yeah,
if you're interested in why Mercury is the messenger, how the planet became known as the messenger, they should go to cycliccatastrophism.org. That's where he has his blogs, and start looking through there. He's got a new book. Apparently, he does have a new book he's putting out now, and he's promoting it on the blog site as his new blog. All
right, would you slowly pronounce that blog again?
Cyclic Catastrophism, CYCLICCATASTROPHISM, cycliccatastrophism.org. I don't remember the exact address.
That's okay. I'll get that up.
Website. Yeah. His main website links to his blog site.
Okay.
His blog site is more helpful overall, but his main website does. Yeah. But the new blog site, he's got a blog where he mentions, here's how you can get the new book. So.
Okay. All right, I'll get that done. No problem. Thanks for offering that, because that is obviously some very good information. And John and I did a number of interviews, I guess, back around 2004 or 5. So it's been a while.
Well, I didn't know it was that long, but yeah. Ernest Martin, John Ackerman, William Ramsey, The Informer, James Montgomery, John Valentini, what I've noticed on my own that pulls it all together, which is another show or two all by itself, but completely changed my outlook on what is going on this planet.
So let me just ask you, just cold, when you found out all this information, what light bulb went on in your head?
The light bulb that went on my head is that Ernest Martin is correct, because I began seeing that whatever John Ackerman has wrong, I began seeing that whatever the Informer and Montgomery have wrong, and whatever William Ramsey has wrong, and whatever John Valentini had wrong, and I began seeing that whatever they have wrong is insignificant compared to what they have right, and it all, I can't explain it all very quickly, so
right.
It all
Okay.
ties together and shows that the people, the people you've had on your show, your show has been a conduit for real, solid information, and you're not putting out junk information, and certainly not. You certainly haven't been involved in deceiving people like the people we're subject to on this planet. So,
through all the interviews I did, and I mean, for the most part, when I had people on, and it was very clear, those who I kind of cleaved to more than others, that when you encountered me through a friend of yours, Eric, who also knew my work, that it dawned on you something is up here, and that to me is one of those aha moments where you realize that, yeah, okay, somebody sees it from afar, and I mean, does that mean you're alone or right? Well, not necessarily, but what you're offering is to people and saying, okay, you take a look at it and you decide for yourselves. And that's, I think, where we've gotten now. John Ackerman, when I interviewed him a long time ago, and before he kind of got ill for a spell and came back, I mean, what he had to share was mind-blowing, but it was accurate. Of course, when the mainstream media doesn't pick you up, everything that happens that's not on the mainstream media, of course, is garbage, which is, in itself garbage. So, I mean, what we're dealing with right now, and I just want to, again, this is kind of a primer for people who have not heard you or perhaps me before, and that is, what we're telling you is the truth. And it may take a lot of scraping through the minefield to find out. But if you do, then you have to make a decision for yourself as to what you think necessarily is going on. So, I mean, that's a long way to going about it, but this brings us back to where you came in also, because you started to realize that, as you just had mentioned, Ramsey, Ackerman, Valentini, I mean, their all works seem to converge on a truth which we would believe because of Jesus Christ, but I'll let you go on with that by all means.
Well, I don't know I haven't met everyone, and so I can't say that the people I'm talking about here, the former Montgomery, Ramsey, Ackerman, Valentini, Martin, I can't say that they all believe exactly what I believe about my need for Messiah or how I relate to our Creator, to Jesus. So when they read from the Bible and they say, well, this right here means this, I'm sure you're going to have different opinions, and somebody might say, well, how can you be linking to their work when they said this about whatever topic, about whatever spiritual topic? But what I can say is the information they brought to your show, their primary information, it's overall it's solid, and it unifies, and I see it leading directly to September 2001, especially the Iron Man in Montgomery. So, and that's what I eventually we need to lead to, but won't be there this evening. But I guess I should probably get back to make sure I explain why I need to not quickly, but I want to make sure I explain. I think we've led up now to where I can explain why I say we are the Gemini. That's the title of this. Mm-hmm. And so I mentioned Martin's work, and I mentioned that the main antagonistic pairing of September 2001 was matched the birth of John the Baptist. So why do I say we're the Gemini? Well, the events of September 11, 2001 are obvious to me as an attack at the pairing of Jesus, in that context Jupiter. It was an obvious attack at the pairing of Jupiter and Gemini. To me it was, because Jupiter in this context is symbolic of Jesus, and I say Gemini is symbolic of us, and I say that because I would say we're men and women, the descendants of the first pair are the Gemini. There was one original flesh. This is from Genesis. One original flesh is made to be a twin pairing of a man and a woman, and then they have descendants. And that's us. I don't see how it's not us. I don't see how those twin towers did not represent us, because in 1966 The towers, I don't know when the construction began, maybe 68. But in 1966, there was probably, I don't know how many ceremonies there were that year for the Twin Towers, but there was one that was important, and that was in late August of 66. Jupiter was in Gemini. So those towers got going with Jupiter and Gemini. They came down 35 years later, 35 significant years later, which we'd like to discuss later as well. But they got going with Jupiter and Gemini, and they were raised to the ground with Jupiter and Gemini. And I'll point out how NASA's involved in this, and because the Mercury to Gemini to Apollo sequence of NASA in the 60s and early 70s, that is the story of September 2001. That is the astrological story of September 2001. If anybody doubts that there wasn't some funny business going on back then, just go to Wikipedia, enter Project Gemini, and then look at the top right and look at the picture you're looking at, the Project Gemini mission or program logo or program emblem. Just look at that picture and ask yourself what those two stars, Castor and Pollux of Gemini, just ask yourself, what do those look like? Given that the messenger phase of NASA's overall foreshadowing ritual, the messenger phase, the first orbiting messenger we had was John Glenn. The first acknowledged orbiting messenger we had was John Glenn, 3 orbits in February 1962.
Right.
There may not have been any funny business going on there. I think the Mercury program itself was part of the ritual, just the whole messenger phase. But the specific mission of John Glenn, he's on Friendship 6 or whichever space capsule he was on. But the fact that John Glenn was our first orbiting messenger, shortly before the towers got going, well, I do not see how in the world that it wasn't planned that he went back up in late 1998, at the age of 77. Hello, William Ramsey. I don't see how that's an accident that he went back up shortly before the towers came down as a ritual messenger. I don't see how that's an accident. What NASA was doing in the 60s, that is the story of September 2001, astrologically speaking, and the numerology is there too, which we'll probably have to point out too.
It was not February 62.
It had to be fairly early, though, because Shepard and Grissom had just gone up in their suborbital flights, but then there was a big deal about John Glenn being the first American to orbit the...
Yeah, I'm looking around on Wikipedia because I remember I was living in a place where it couldn't have happened in 62, at least in February.
The main thing I was pointing out was the Project Gemini program, that picture, that the Project Gemini, what do you call it, an emblem? The program patch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to prejudice anybody's thoughts about if they go look at it and what they see, but oh boy, Project Gemini. I see it as no coincidence. I see it as no accident that, given the events of September 11, 2001, Jupiter and Gemini, given one of the groundbreaking ceremonies for the towers in August of 66,
right.
About 2 weeks later, with Jupiter and Gemini 11 lifts off. I don't see how all that's just the random meanderings of history.
All right, let me clarify this because I don't want to leave people with a misconception. It said John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth aboard Friendship 7 on February 20, 1962. That's what you're talking about. On the Mercury Atlas 6 mission, circling the globe 3 times during a flight lasting 4 hours and 55 minutes and 23 seconds. This made Glenn the 3rd American in space and the 5th human being in space. So I stand corrected. But I remember that happening, and I remember watching the TV while he made the 3 passes. I mean, that was really big deal in the old TV days. And understand, in February 62, this child was 10 years old.
Yeah, but do you see what's going on? I mean, NASA put a messenger. You can go read John Ackerman's work about Mercury, the messenger planet, why it is the messenger. So that was shortly before the towers got going. That in itself, you figure that's no big deal because, somebody's got to go up, right? Somebody's going to orbit the planet first for the Americans. Well, why did he go up again in 98 on the space shuttle? Why did he go? I mean, why is NASA interested in sending someone who's in his late 70s? And he was, maybe people should check on me that he was 77, from what I remember seeing when that happened. So, from what I also know, in early 93, at age 77. David Rockefeller was age 77 when we had the WTC bombing. Then George H. Bush Sr. was 77 in September of 2001. Oh, and I know a whole lot of 77s that I can tell you. It's not the purpose here, but I can give you a whole list of 77s that lead straight back to Ernest Martin and the star Regulus in Leo, in the constellation Leo, and that leads right back to why he's correct about Jesus being born on September 11th, 3 BC. So, why did John Glenn go back up? I say he went back up in 98 as a ritual messenger that those towers were coming down. Having been, the first orbiting messenger back in 62, why not have him go back up right before the towers come down as another messenger, as another message? NASA was part of the show.
Are you saying that necessarily Glenn knew what he was doing?
No, I can't say that, but I wonder.
Okay. Yeah.
I wonder. You got to be wondering. Okay, he's a. Well, he's got to be wondering. Well, why are they interested in me going up? And I can't. No, I'm not going to say that he knew, but the people who run NASA, they know what's going on this planet. They know the deal. They know what they're doing. They know who they are. And they know who we are, and I say they know we are the Gemini because that Project Gemini logo or emblem, that mission patch or program patch, you look at that, and I say it's no accident that coincided so closely, and the Project Gemini coincided so closely with the ceremonial beginning of those towers, with Jupiter and Gemini. In this context, you could say with Jesus in Gemini, or with Jesus paired with the Gemini, who is us. So the towers got going with Jupiter and Gemini, pairing Jesus with the Gemini. They came down on time, according to plan, with Jupiter and Gemini, with Jesus paired with the Gemini. I say we're the Gemini because we are the twins of Genesis. One flesh was made to be a male and female twins. And so I don't see how those twin towers, those Gemini towers, were not symbolic of us.
When you say we are the Gemini, tighten the personification down as to what that would mean.
I say we're the Gemini, lowercase w. There are a large number of the descendants of Adam and Eve. And there are those on this planet who are running the show. They've already chosen their side. They know who they serve, and they know who they are attacking, and they know who they are pairing together when they do certain things with Jupiter and Gemini. So, these people, they've already chosen their side, and I guess I'm not really answering. I had thought I was prepared to explain a question like that.
All right, hold on. Believe me, I can cut this out, so just go ahead. I'll take it out, no problem.
Yeah, I don't want to say something that's just necessarily cute and witty. It's this is the important question, though. As I see it, it's the Gemini who the Messiah was here for. Those who recognize that we need to be reconciled to our Creator, and that we are corrupt. We have been corrupted, and there is a separation there that is irreconcilable without someone who has the authority and who was authorized to act as an ambassador for us. That's us.
All right, but because
the descendants of Adam and Eve, but you've got another group of people on this planet. They've already chosen their side, and they haven't chosen Jupiter. In this context, they've chosen Saturn, Jupiter's replacement. That's why David Rockefeller was born with Saturn in Gemini. Given his importance to the beginning of those towers, up and going, giving his importance, it's no accident then, it seems. It's no accident that he was born with Saturn in Gemini. Saturn being Jupiter's replacement. Does that help explain, or is it?
Yeah, but by being star-crossed, then that would mean that Rockefeller was conducted or impelled to do what he did.
Given the signs in the sky at the time he was born with all the visible planets in the constellations over which they rule in the Western astrology system. All the planets in the constellations they rule, except Saturn. Saturn was out of place. Mercury the messenger, there's another messenger. Mercury the messenger was in Gemini when Rockefeller was born, sending us a message. And Saturn was in Gemini when Rockefeller was born. So Saturn, Jupiter's replacement. Given the signs in the sky when he was born, it seems like he was given a task. These elitists, aristocratic elitists, they know who they are. They've already chosen a side.
Right.
They know they are against the Lord. They know they're against Jesus. They know they're against us.
Right.
They've already chosen their side. As I see it, you've got a group of people on this planet. They've already chosen their side. They identify themselves with the centaurs as the archers of Sagittarius. That's the reason that antagonism is so important. That's the foreshadowing. You've got two groups of people. You've got people who already know they're serving Satan and who want to drag a whole lot of us with them. We have an offer available to us, and I see that there's a fundamental legal reason why we need a Messiah, fundamental legal reason.
So let's end with this, by the way. Can we make a choice? Can we get out of this? Can we understand that this is a very pivotal point in human history?
Yes, September 2001 it wasn't a shot across the bow. It was blunt force trauma to our face.
Okay.
That you've got a group of people who identify themselves as different from us. They know this. They know the spiritual side they're siding on, and by calling us the Gemini, no, we should not. I'm not saying let's get involved in all astrology and become astrologers. What I'm saying is you've got a group of people who, as I see it, they're calling us as separate from them. They're identifying themselves with the centaurs of Sagittarius, and they're identifying us as the descendants of Adam, who, it makes me wonder just who are the sons of God of Genesis chapter 6. And I'm not talking about giants here. I'm just talking about who are the descendants of the sons of God. Okay. You've got people on this planet who, obviously, they act like it. They believe they're better than us, and, I don't want to scare anybody, but they do want to kill off as many of us because the Georgia Guidestones were not installed and in place just for the fun of it. The first tenet and the first precept of the Georgia Guidestones is going to require how many people on this planet now? It's going to require probably 6.5 billion people to die.
Something like that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Rockefeller and the group he sided with, his clan, they identify themselves as absolutely different from us.
Mm-hmm.
And they do certain things according to a timeline. Two of them were the beginning of the towers and the end of the towers, 66 and 2001. Jupiter was in Gemini. Well, given that Rockefeller was born with Saturn in Gemini, there's a replacement. As I see it in this context, Saturn is Satan, and Satan is certainly bent on severing the pair of Jupiter in this context, of Jesus in this context, with us, who I say we are the Gemini. So Saturn is Jupiter's replacement. You're talking about people who are going to end up following. You've got Messiah and you've got anti-Messiah. I would rather be one of the Gemini and follow who I see as the Messiah, who is here for as I see it, for a fundamentally legal reason. And you've got Satan or Saturn in this context, who wants to sever that tie and drag a whole lot of us down with him. So I hope that explains it well enough. In the first show we just did, I'm trying to further make the case that, as I see it, there is a group of people on this planet who they definitely consider themselves superior to us, and they, astrologically speaking, I've noticed that they seem to be identifying themselves as different from us. They identify us as the Gemini, and they identify themselves with Sagittarius. So what I've noticed is that in the novel 2001: A Space Odyssey, I mean, I've read the novel and I've seen the movie, but I'm going to be discussing right here specifically from the novel because I've noticed what it appears to me is that Clark is actually pointing out the Sagittarius, the group of people identifying themselves with Sagittarius, and the Gemini, the people that they identify as I guess that's us, the useless feeders, and the little people. So you have to think back to the movie. Moonwatcher is the ape at the beginning who touches the monolith and gets the special knowledge and then gets the bright idea to pick up the bone and use it to hunt with and then to eventually kill another ape.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the first chapter of 2001: A Space Odyssey, Moonwatcher and his tribe, they've been out not hunting, excuse me. At this point, they've just been out gathering food. And Moonwatcher had come across some honey. And he's licking his fingers, and he's on his way back home to the cave. And Clark mentioned that he's content as now as he's probably ever going to be. But his contentment vanished when he reached the stream. The others were there, capital O. They were there every day, but that did not make it any less annoying. And he mentions here there were about 30 of them, an exact quote, and they could not have been distinguished from the members of Moonwatcher's own tribe. So, he calls Moonwatcher's tribe, I'm going to point out to you here in a moment how that's directly related to Dave Bowman and Sagittarius, that line of people. But here, Clark is referring to the others with capital O. And they could not have been distinguished from the members of Moonwatcher's own tribe. Well, that's what we got going on this planet.
Well, how so?
We're all people. I mean, these people who hate us, they have blood in their veins just like us. They eat like us. They drink like us. They have to go to sleep. They have to use the bathroom. You know, they can get a headache. They can get sick. They are born. They die. They look like us, but for some reason, they consider themselves superior to us, and they think it's their birthright to domineer over everyone else who is not of, I guess you could say, of their tribe.
Well, can we say that they've been kind of successful?
Oh, they've been extremely successful, yes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they've done a great job of. Unfortunately, we've helped them too, but they've done a great job, and we've done a great job of helping them dumb us down in every way possible. And that's the sad state of affairs on this planet.
All right, so this is the ongoing situation we have right now.
Yes, and I see that Arthur C. Clarke was describing in 2001: A Space Odyssey in the novel. He's describing the class distinction that I've noticed when it comes to the primary astrology of September 2001. And so Moonwatcher is one who's going to. Moonwatcher is eventually. He's going to. Well, let me just say this. Moonwatcher wakes up in the morning. What was this? This thing wasn't there last night. He wakes up, and in the movie he touches the monolith. Well, in the book it's very specific. The monolith grabs individually each one of his tribe. The monolith grabs them. It grabs their mind, their attention, and they're helpless. And it teaches them things. And so it teaches Moonwatcher's tribe, but especially Moonwatcher, it teaches them various skills. I mean, they still have to practice, and they're still kind of, fumbly with it, but they're still they're not skilled yet, but as time goes on, they will develop these skills that they've learned. They've been taught in their mind. And a year goes by, and Moonwatcher's tribe has, Clark mentions that in the course of a single year, Moonwatcher and his companions have changed almost beyond recognition. Not so much physically, but the way they can use tools now, and they hunt with the bones, and they have small tools they can use. Well, but no utopia is perfect. One of the reasons Clark says that is because the tribe across the river, the others, capital O, they had survived and had stubbornly refused to die of starvation. And so what happens here is Moonwatcher, he and his tribe, to get to the point where eventually, think about the movie. They come upon the others at the little watering hole. Well, here in the book, Moonwatcher and his tribe, they bring their weapons. There's Moonwatcher plus 12 others, there's 13 of them. They come, they bring their weapons, and they're coming to kill. And they kill the leader. Well, Moonwatcher kills the leader of the others, capital O. So that's significant because Moonwatcher is directly related to Dave Bowman, because after Moonwatcher kills the leader of the others, the other tribe, Clark mentions that, he's amazed in what he's just done. Now he was master of the world, and he was not quite sure what to do next. But he would think of something. So at the end, when Dave Bowman goes to the monolith, and he becomes the star child, the bubble baby, and arrives back at Earth, and it's the exact same thing. Let me get to it here quickly. In the last chapter, Star Child. So the Star Child gets back to Earth, and there before him, a glittering toy no Star Child could resist, floated the planet Earth with all its peoples. I'm thinking these are the others, the rest of the others, capital O. But these are the little peoples. So he mentions that here come the nations of the world. They throw up their nuclear weapons at him because there's some big menace in the sky. But he became aware that a slumbering cargo of death had awoken and was stirring sluggishly in its orbit. But he's not worried about it, but he wants a cleaner sky, so he put forth his will and he detonates them. Then he waited, marshaling his thoughts and brooding over what his untested powers. So though he was master of the world, he was not quite sure what to do next, but he would think of something. That's exactly as Moonwatcher. Moonwatcher made the kill, killed the leader of the others, and he didn't know what to do next, but he would think of something. Well, here the Star Child is back at planet Earth, and just like Moonwatcher, he doesn't know what to do next, but he'll think of something. So from Moonwatcher to Dave Bowman, that's one lineage. They represent, well, because Bowman is a reference to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a bowman, is an archer. Mm-hmm. So from Moonwatcher to Bowman as the Star Child, that's the lineage of the Sagittarius. And then, well, Moonwatcher, the original, I guess the progenitor of that lineage in here, in this novel, he killed the leader of the others. And then I see it as Dave Bowman. Here he's back at planet Earth, and he's going to, a glittering toy no Star Child could resist, floated the planet Earth with all its peoples on. I think it seems to me that Bowman, the Star Child, is here to clean house, to get rid of the rest of the others, the little people. I mean, have I made enough of a case there? Because there's more.
Yeah,
Does that make sense what I said?
Yeah, not a problem. I'm just wondering. I think the objective is to obviously dominate and depopulate and keep just enough around to do the wet work. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think they thoroughly want to get rid of the hoi polloi because they don't have to do anything. They want us to be the servants forever. And I mean, how do you feel about that? I don't think it's absolutely wipe out.
Yeah, well.
And not that you suggested that, but I mean, that's their goal, to keep just as few around as is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I take the Georgia Guidestones seriously. The first first precept is to get rid of a whole lot of people. That's not there just for nothing.
No.
There are these people who identify themselves with the constellation Sagittarius, as opposed to us. As opposed to us, the Gemini, they do want to get rid of a lot of us. So if they enact the Georgia Guidestones to follow 2 through 10, I don't remember what they all are, but they all follow logically from number 1. They only work if you do number 1, and number 1 is you get rid of reduce the world's population down to around 500 million, and that will require, roughly 6.5 billion people to be killed.
Yeah, and everywhere you look, I mean, I don't know if you remember the famous Jacques Cousteau quote that came out quite a few years ago now, when he just glibly said, basically to preserve the earth, call it sustainability. you'd have to kill about 100,000 people a day. It was something like that. It was so insane I couldn't believe it when I heard it on the radio. So I went and took a look, and sure enough, there was the quote. It was in the UN magazine at the time.
Yeah.
I can't remember which it was. But every time you turn around, everybody's squawking. I mean, what's behind peak oil? Too many people, eventually. That's what it gets down to. Global warming, or whatever you want to call it, climate change. Get rid of people. Everything is geared to depopulate.
Kill.
Well, Ronnie, if you think about it, and this is something we are not, I don't think, we don't have in the forefront of our mind about the casualties that take place outside of war. And a while ago, I was taking a look at World War II civilian casualties, and I cannot recite the number, but it was staggering. So when you think about it, what is one of the greatest and most beneficial money-making enterprises for the, what would you call them, the Sagittarii? And that is to have a world war. Because not only do you make a lot of money with the armaments and such, and rebuilding after everything's been deconstructed, but you also take out not only the soldiers, which represent probably the healthiest of any of the country's population. This is why war is crazy too. You know, human beings send the fit out to fight, and I understand why. But that leaves the 4F home, the breed. That is not looked at as a socio-biologically smart move, but that's what we do, and it happened especially in World War II. So when you take a look at not only the military casualties, but especially the fatalities on the civilian side, it goes a lot further, and probably is a pretty effective, and as we said, financially beneficial enterprise to these people, and I think we have one coming in the not-too-distant future.
Oh, yeah. We have to, because, well, it's been so long since the last major worldwide conflict, then, you know, they have to be itching to get us to, they have to be itching to get it started again.
Yeah, and as you're pointing out, though, too, I think this time around it's not just going to be, and I hate to use this kind of terminology, but just put quotation marks around it, it's just not going to be another world war. I mean, this is going to bring on something as well.
Oh, with September 2001, what I've seen, it all adds up to me. Jupiter and Gemini, Mars and Sagittarius. It's the Sagittarius. It's the Roman, an old Roman word for they had a unit of their military with a unit of archers, the Sagittarius. That's what I call them in plural. So Jupiter and Gemini. We're the Gemini. Those towers represented us. And then the archers of Sagittarius, they're coming after us. That's the primary astrology that goes with September 11th to the 17th of 2001. It was in many movies. It's here in this. It's here in the novel 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's in the movie, but it's more specific in the novel. Clark kind of spells it out better. And it's interesting you pointed up Jacques Cousteau, though, mentioning however many people have to die per day to reach a sustainable level of the little people. Well, you know, is that a joke on us? Because the initials JC. Look who's telling us that, you know, we got to die off.
Yeah.
JC. Makes me wonder.
Well, of course, it was a shock to many because Jacques Cousteau was always portrayed as such a warm individual, and of course, when it has to do with what he does best, especially with oceanography and species below the I mean, everybody just got a nice feeling about him. And then when you see him come out with this comment, it's like, what?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I did. I said, whoa, no, I got to take a look. And sure enough, it was there. So
save the whales, kill the babies.
One quick aside, and I'll let you get back. But, you know, we've mentioned Clark a lot, and Clark comes up all the time, especially as it relates to more or less a wink and a nod about the things to come. One, do you think Clark knew exactly what the plan is? And two, do you think he necessarily was a proponent and a supporter of it, or do you think he just basically laid it out for us?
I think he was the chosen spokesperson. I mean, I'm reading it in this book. I can't go through it all tonight, but I've also talked with, by email, William Ramsey. I sent him some of the things I've noticed that Clark is obviously a student of Crowley. I don't think he's a fan. He was a fan.
He's a devotee. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a real student. He was a devotee. Yeah, he knew. I mean, for one reason, he chose to spell out in here, I don't have the exact quote, it doesn't matter, but he chose to make sure we know that the moon monolith was 11 feet tall. And given the timing of this, the movie, Clark and Kubrick worked together in the mid-'60s. Given the timing of this with Project Gemini, and I know that Project Gemini was all about us and the Twin Towers, and for 2001, roughly 35 years later. I mean, just go look at the Project Gemini mission emblem or mission logo, mission picture. Just go to Wikipedia, whoever wants to do that. Go look at that and look at Castor and Pollux and where they're positioned on those. Just anybody wants to go look at the Project Gemini, I guess you would call it logo, and that's, I don't need to say too much, but I think you'll see what I see in it.
All right, now, just to touch upon what you had said in part one, just because I think it just comes into play for a second here, all I'm asking you for is an okay or am I wrong? In essence, when Glenn went up, you believe that that was a certain kind of, shall we say, triggering event as well?
I would say it was a definite message the second time. The first time, he's the first one up. There's probably something going on, but I don't know. But having been the first messenger toward this planet, for us anyway, that we're told about, having been the first one, then why not have him go up again in 98 at the age of 77? Well, there's Flight 77. There's the 77-foot-tall Pentagon located on the 77th West Meridian.
Okay. And one last thing about Clark. One, do you believe that he met with foul play?
You mean Kubrick?
Yeah, I'm thinking about Kubrick. You're right. Yeah. I kind of don't distinguish between both of them. They seem to me to be joined at the hip. But I would have to distinguish it because Clark obviously wrote, Kubrick presented it, and all right. And I also wonder now if Kubrick too understood the game plan, which I think he did, and whether or not he was a proponent of it as well.
Yeah, I can't say how much of. Here, part of the problem is when it comes to the 2001 story in the mid-'60s, they were working together from about 64 to 67. The movie came out in 68, and the novel published shortly thereafter, maybe a couple months later, in 68. Well, I can't say. It's hard to tell how much of the movie was from Clark and how much of the book, how much of the overlap. It's hard to say how much of the movie was from Clark and Kubrick and how much of the book was from each one of them, because they started on, as far as I'm aware, actually I've read The Lost Worlds of 2001 where Clark describes, I'm hoping probably not altogether honestly though, he describes the creative process between him and Kubrick for this storyline, and they started out with the novel. They didn't go for a script at first. They just wrote the novel first, but then the novel ended up being published after the movie was released. So it's hard to say. I'm having a hard time teasing out who's. I think Clark is probably overall the one who had the greater awareness of the deep, dark occult elements that ended up in the story. But Kubrick was quite aware of a few things, and maybe at the end I could mention a bang, bang, bang sequence in the movie where he throws a lot in there right there visually, and then he throws in a little audio quip that's very interesting. But, yeah, I think Clark, I don't remember what the original question was, but Clark was definitely, Clark knew what was going on, he knew what he was doing, and I'm trying to get to the point here where I'll say that Clark was definitely a believer in who we would call the Messiah, and that's what the AE-35 is all about.
Okay.
But I mentioned Moonwatcher to Bowman, that relation, and another thing that says to me that Clark was deliberately showing how the year 2001 was going to host some event or something where you had the Sagittarius take aim, shoot their arrows, and attack the others, the little people. The reason I say that, there's another reason here because Dave Bowman is the one who goes to Dave Bowman is the only one who goes to the Stargate monolith. It's called a Stargate in the story, in the book. And he's the only one who goes to there at the expense of all the other astronauts who are on the ship. And when Hal mentions in Chapter 21, Birthday Party, when Hal mentions that, he mentions right here, sorry to interrupt the festivities, but we have a problem. So Bowman and Poole was talking with his parents. He'd had a birthday party. He was talking on the television screen with his parents back on Earth, but he's out on his way he's past Jupiter now. Sorry to interrupt the festivities, but we have a problem. So they ask him, what is it? I'm having difficulty in maintaining contact with Earth. The trouble is in the AE-35 unit. My Fault Prediction Center reports that it may fail within 72 hours. So the AE-35 is a little control box that relays the commands from the main computer of HAL to the antenna, to the antenna motors to keep it aligned with Earth so they can continue to keep in contact and communication with Earth, with mission control on Earth. So HAL recommends that they replace the AE-35. And there's a whole lot going on here, because later in Chapter 33, well, first I should say that when HAL mentions this, and Bowman and Poole start to act on HAL's recommendations, and this is where all the trouble begins on the Discovery, which soon leads to everyone but Dave Sagittarius Bowman being killed. They're the others. They're the Gemini. They're just like the others, the leader of the others that Moonwatcher killed. So all the astronauts on the Discovery are separate from they're of a different lineage. This book is showing two lineages. There's us and them, the Gemini and the Sagittarius. Bowman's line, Moonwatcher to Bowman's line, and then the other people. And all the others are the ones who were killed in this. It's never the Sagittarius. So HAL recommends that they replace the AE-35. But you find out in Chapter 33, called Ambassador, you find out about Dave Bowman. He's the only one left at this point, and he's on his way to Saturn's moon, Iapetus. That's where the monolith, the big monolith is that acts as the Stargate that will take him out to meet his destiny. So Clark mentions that in the whole of history, there had never been a situation quite like this. He's talking about Bowman. And he says, he was an ambassador extraordinary, plenipotentiary for all mankind. And it's important because Dave Bowman was 35 years of age. You find out in one of the earlier chapters that he was 35. So Bowman is one of the other AE-35s here. He's the ambassador extraordinary, plenipotentiary for all mankind. He's 35, so he's one of the AE-35s as well. The AE-35 control unit that HAL recommends be replaced, that's the ostensible, superficially that's the AE-35, but Dave Bowman is one of the AE-35s too, because he's the ambassador extraordinary. For all mankind, Clark says, but not really. I would say for all man, capital M, for all the big people, the we the people from the Constitution, those people. And this is significant that Dave Bowman is one of the AE-35s because when HAL mentions for them to replace the AE-35 unit, it looks to me like what he's really saying is to replace Jesus Christ, because Ernest Martin points out that Jesus was born September 11th, 3 BC, the Gregorian date of September 11th, 3 BC, and I've looked through Chronos, Kairos, and Christos, and it seems that the crucifixion was in April of 33 AD. So Jesus, if that's true, then Jesus was crucified with Jupiter and Gemini, and he was born not with Jupiter and Gemini, but 6 months before the messenger John the Baptist was born with Jupiter and Gemini. And Dave Bowman, being 35 in the year 2001, that's linking him to the Twin Towers, because the Twin Towers began and ended in 66 with Jupiter and Gemini. And it began ceremonially, but 66, Jupiter and Gemini, 2001, Jupiter and Gemini. So Dave Bowman, being 35 in the year 2001, he was born with Jupiter and Gemini, and here he is in 2001 with Jupiter and Gemini, and HAL is recommending for them to replace what I call the genuine AE-35. I mean, there are at least three of them. Am I making sense? There are three of the AE-35s in here. It's a very important concept because Arthur C. Clarke is saying replace the Messiah. That's what it looks like to me.
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, that's the whole idea of the satanic strategy, isn't it?
Yes, but I mean, you wouldn't think Arthur C. Clarke, he doesn't believe in any of this. Oh, yes, he does. I mean, they put on this, they're two-faced, right? They have this face that the spiritual life means nothing to them, and it's just stupidity, and why would I believe in someone didn't exist? But when you get down to it, he was a firm believer. That's That's what he's describing here. Replace the AE-35. I would say Jesus Christ as the Messiah is the genuine, the ultimate AE-35, the ultimate ambassador for the Gemini. But Dave Bowman is described as the ambassador extraordinary, plenipotentiary for all mankind. But he is an ambassador for a different lineage or different group of people. Clark is laying out a definitive difference, for some difference between him. He was an elitist. I know he was a Crowley devotee, and I also know that Clark read a quote of his that he made this little joke that I don't believe in astrology. Besides, I'm a Sagittarius, and we're skeptical. He was born in mid-December, so in the Western system that these people are following, he was Sagittarian. So he did believe in astrology, the real astrology, not the stuff you get out of the newspapers and to hopefully you're going to get some advice about your love life or whatever. But he believed in the real astrology. So that's what's going on in this story. He's pointing out two distinct types of people. He's calling for genocide, as I say. It seems to me he's calling for genocide, but the way he has the Star Child show up back at planet Earth, and he doesn't know what to do with his powers, but he'll think of something. And I think the Star Child, which is Dave Bowman, who has transcended his mortal existence, the Star Child, the Bubble Babies come back to, enact the Georgia Guidestones, or to get that going. And he's calling for the replacement of Jesus Christ. That's what's going on with the AE-35. There are at least three of them. There's the AE-35 control unit, and then that's used by Hal saying it's going to fail. And see, this is all planned by Hal. It's not real. Hal makes this up. The computer is lying. The computer makes this up and causes this, and it's just being used. It's being used as a plot-wise. It's being used as an excuse to get rid of everybody else on the ship but Dave Bowman, so he can go through the monolith and meet his destiny. And then in the movie, you see him on the bed in the hotel room, which is the alien entities have read his mind, and they're just providing him with familiar surroundings. But in the movie, you see him reach out his right hand toward the monolith when he's on the bed, and his physical body's dying, and he reaches out toward that. And I forgot where it was pointed out, but that is a direct allusion to the Michelangelo's painting of the creation of Adam.
I've wondered, and it doesn't really matter that much at this point, but it must go through people's minds who are going to listen to this. What is the end game? What do those who serve the dark side expect to get after this life is over? And in some literature I've read, they believe they're going to come back again on this earth. So what they're stressing or striving for, they think that they may come back and experience when it's more advanced. However, you get recycled. Some may believe that they're going to live in eternity and it's going to be really great. So it's kind of hard to say. I mean, do you have any take on that, or do you know for yourself, or from what you've encountered as far as information goes, what these people expect?
Well, I've never been to the meetings. I don't get invited.
Okay.
I don't really want to go to the meetings either.
I deserve that. Okay.
Yeah.
But I have to laugh because, I remember back in the 70s when there was a murder that was blamed on Satanist teenagers. And one had left some kind of information to the fact that, if I commit suicide after I do this or whatever, then when I will come back and be in charge of legions of demons. So you can see that also is kind of like an anti-Bible thing, a parallel, but of course on the dark side, a counterfeit. And I'm just wondering, and when I look at Rockefeller, I'm like, what is it all for? Do you believe you're going to live in some kind of Elysian field paradise afterwards for all your yeoman's work? I don't know. They got to believe there's something beyond this. They have to.
Well, in the movie 2001, the way Kubrick shows it, that I guess that has to be what they ultimately believe. Are they trying to reconnect with, as they said, are they trying to reconnect with God? Or the way it plays out is, Bowman reaches out his right hand and he's like pointing, and he's like reaching forward, and then here's the final monolith in the film coming toward him, and then he goes through it. It transforms into the Star Child there on the bed. But by making that reference to the creation of Adam, it seems, I don't.
No, I don't think
wanna-
that. I don't. All right, and like I said, I don't want to put you on the spot there. This is something that's crossed my mind, and now you're talking about this. But no, what you just referred to, I don't think they're trying to reconnect to God. I think they're trying to make themselves as God, which is the whole. That's the whole. What would you call it? A sin that casts Satan out of heaven.
Yeah, become to be
As God.
High.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that that's what it's all about. That you cut Jehovah out of the deal, that you yourself will be elevated to that status.
I can also see how that is could be in how they might consider that the way it was shown on screen in the movie. I could also see how the Sagittarius would consider that as a new Adam, a new creation for a new age,
Yes,
or
exactly.
a replacement Adam.
Mm-hmm. Right.
To replace us, and that's what it's all about. When those towers were attacked. They were attacked, obviously. I say they were attacked by Armstrong and Aldrin, Flight 11, and not quite Flight 175. But we were, I tried to make a little Apollo joke there with Apollo 11 was Armstrong and Aldrin, and I think Crowley's AA is what influenced the choice of their initials because Apollo 11 and 9/11 are synonymous.
Remember,
as I see it.
Remember something also, too, Ron, and that is, there's something up there right now in its place. I mean, they put up the Freedom Tower, they call it.
Now it's called
another monstrosity, huh?
What is it called? One World Tower, something like that now.
So there again, if you think about it for another time, here you have the recreation. The two towers are down, and what do you have in its place is this thing. So we have a rebirth, if you will.
Yeah. You referring to that email, or just something we talked about before?
Really, all of it.
Yeah, because I sent around a couple of emails recently.
Yes, you did.
Ultimately, those are all the things we're trying to talk about here. They don't have to come up all on the same show. But, yeah, I do see, okay, as far as a birthday party on the 11th, in the chapter, let me get this thing open here. In the chapter here, chapter 21, it's called Birthday Party. This is where Hal recommends to replace the AE-35, which ultimately means to replace the genuine Messiah, AE-35, who looks like was at 35 years of age when crucified. In this chapter, it's called Birthday Party. That's where this is mentioned. And, so I could see how September 11, 2001 was a birthday party to replace the genuine Messiah. And, 7 days later on the 17th, which is important, and we can get to that. I was trying to build to that why the 17th is at least as important as the 11th. So, the 11th was a birthday party, and that seems to be a birthday party for Jesus Christ. That seems to be what Clark is saying here by having this in the chapter called Birthday Party. Replace the AE-35. That's Jesus here, and replace the AE-35 of Jesus. Replace that AE-35 with Dave Bowman, who he describes as the ambassador for a different line of people.
Let me just throw this in there before you go any further, because I just want to get it out. It's interesting to me, now that the Liberty Tower is up, or whatever the heck they call it, that this next Super Bowl that's coming up, which will be held February 2nd of 2014, is going to be held in the MetLife Stadium, which for all intents and purposes replaced the Meadowlands Stadium, on the Jersey side of the Hudson River. So it's a brand spanking new stadium, very luminous. And from that stadium, if you could look eastward, and you can on the west side of the stadium, you can see the New York skyline, and you can see the new Freedom Tower. And what I find so strange is that this is the first Super Bowl that will ever be held in a northern locale, a northern tier city that doesn't have a dome. They're going to play this sucker outside at night in February in New Jersey. And I just think that is so bizarre. Because the next three Super Bowls are going to go back to warm climes, whether it's Glendale, Arizona, and then it goes to Santa Clara, California, and then it goes to Houston. But to bring this one out and play it, all the havoc that could be visited upon something like that with regard to a blizzard or bad weather or just single-digit temperatures, it never made sense to me. But I think of it in terms now of what's going on across the river, that this is something of, and I think you'll admit, I think probably the biggest machismo event in America is the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah.
and I've also had bad feelings about it because I'm wondering if something might go wrong there deliberately, if you know what I mean. And I'm thinking of the movie Sum of All Fears. So I don't know, but this is just kind of really strange. And
It
of
is
course,
called
huh?
I was going to say it is called the Empire State, and that's not accidental.
No, but if you think about it too, is that what is the only obelisk that you could, well, something that you would call akin to an obelisk on the island of Manhattan, and that's the Empire State Building. And if you want to, yes, we can go one further and also say the Chrysler Building, and the two of them are pretty close to one another in Midtown Manhattan. So yes, the Empire and the obelisk, and they were in touch, were they, on 2001, 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think that's a coincidence.
Since I noted it, I don't have a thorough list, but I've noted quite a few events that seem to be the Jupiter and Gemini timeline seems to be a pacing. It seems to be a pacing, or certain key events that are related that lead to September 2001. They often happen with Jupiter and Gemini. So I've wondered if something else was going to happen, like if there was going to be a false, what do you call it?
A false flag event?
False terrorist event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If it was going to happen at the Super Bowl next year, I thought, well, it's another Jupiter. Jupiter is in Gemini, and I looked it up, and if I remember right, I could have to check it again, but I remember seeing that that's another month where you have Tuesday the 11th and Monday the 17th. And I know it's early in the month on the 2nd, but I just, oh, gee. But I also wonder if you don't want to get yourself worked up over something that,
No.
you know.
No, but I had told you about that a long time ago, and I look at things differently than I do as things used to be about 13 years ago. So when this came up, I mean, most people are like, well, that's kind of a weird choice, but okay. I mean, but now I'm thinking, okay, what else is this about?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't wish anything, but if you wanted to absolutely drive America crazy, you would kick it in its patriotic chops, if you know what I mean. And that would, and then remember, the whole idea of an attack at the Super Bowl has been in cinema for quite some time. We can go back to Charlton Heston's Black Sunday. I mean, that's always been kind of a thought of it. And the last thing we had was the Sum of All Fears, where the event happens in Baltimore. But it's just one of those things that are kind of like out there, maybe in the subconscious.
Well, the recent Batman movie, Gotham is portrayed.
Yeah,
You know, it's New York City basically, the way it's shown, and then Batman saves the day. But you do see, I mean, the bomb doesn't go off in the city, but he gets the nuclear bomb and he drops that over the ocean. But you see a nuclear flash.
Okay.
And it's a city that's a lot like New York City.
Well, New York's nickname has always, well, before the Apple, I mean, going before the Big Apple, was Gotham.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Oh, gee.
I mean, Gotham is also now vernacular for, I guess, city or whatever. But Gotham was always New York. And for a while there, I don't know how long it lasted, but there was a little-known, annual bowl game that you have at the end of December and into January, and it was the Gotham Bowl.
Oh, man.
Oh, no, there's no doubt about it. I thought more people knew it, but that was always Gotham.
And then the main bad guy, Bane, he refers to the Gothamites in the movie, in the Dark Knight Rises last year. And I was concerned. I don't want to get off topic, so I shouldn't.
I know. Okay, it's okay. We'll wrap it up, Ronnie. I mean, as far as this goes, and I'll back off. But please, I mean, I think it's worthwhile. So.
Well, I mean, I was going to mention something. I'll tell you what I was going to mention, but we shouldn't talk about it because it really would get us off topic. I was going to mention the whole Sandy Hook angle and why it is that Bruce Wayne gratuitously shoots an arrow at the beginning of that movie, which is it's just so stupid and out of context, and it's just I have a bad feeling something's coming because of that. That's what I'm saying. And besides just Sandy Hook happening in December, which is another issue, another show. But
yeah, that whole thing was peculiar. But when they put that map out that we saw, which was a still from the movie, you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And it had Sandy Hook on it. Now we've talked about this too. Sandy Hook is a legitimate, I guess, what would you call it, marine marker.
Yeah.
We talked about that. The Titanic usually headed for that.
Yes, that's what's important. The main
Or would
entrance.
have headed for it.
The main entrance from the old world,
Right, into the new.
into the New World was the Sandy Hook, New York City inlet.
Right, and that's at the end of the peninsula that juts out from New Jersey into the south of New York Bay.
And I find that kind of unsettling.
Well, when I looked at the map, I could tell that to the right of the hands that were on the map, where you were looking at right there, is part of Long Island and the Bronx. So, I mean, Sandy Hook, when it was there, originally it made sense to me because Sandy Hook kind of would be around there to the southwest of that whole thing, and yet that now takes a different meaning because of what took place in Connecticut. So, it all kind of made sense. So I guess it was kind of like a double meaning, if you will, with the appearance of Sandy Hook on that map. It looked legitimate in a sense, but was it a foreshadowing of what would take place in that Connecticut town? Who knows?
We just had Hurricane Sandy.
And it was Hurricane Sandy, yeah.
That came through the Sandy Hook, New York City area. I mean, and that looks like, I know the winds blow. Well, I know the winds, when it gets up high enough, the winds will blow it the way it did. But you look at the storm track, it's a big hook, a big right hook into the, or a big
left hook
into the.
Yeah.
And then the school, Sandy Hook Elementary, was right there at the end of a hooked road. I mean, you go down past the firehouse, it's straight, and then it hooks straight into the school. It's really unsettling.
Well, yeah, I mean, that low count made it very possible for nobody to see what was going on there. There was a school, it was at St. Rose Academy, it was across the street and a little bit to the west, and that was very viewable from that main road, which I guess is maybe US 6, but it's also called something else that goes through the area. But where you have that particular school, the Sandy Hook Elementary, that thing was very far out of sight, and I don't think that was a coincidence as well, so...
No.
All right, well, thank you for suffering me with that topic, and get on track again if you can, bro.
One thing I should mention, Bowman, Dave Sagittarius Bowman, ends up being the only one, and I'm talking about the novel here, he ends up being the only one to get out to Saturn. The only one who survives Hal's rampage, and the only one who makes it to Saturn, to Saturn's moon Iapetus, where the monolith is. In the movie, they go to Jupiter. I don't know what the switch is. I don't know the whole story. But it seemed to be significant that, it is significant that Bowman is the only one who makes it. And he's the ambassador for the Sagittarius, and he's going to go meet his destiny at Iapetus. He goes through the Stargate at Iapetus. Now, I don't know, because I'm not a Mason, and I'm not a secret society member. I'm not a high-level occultist, but I have heard in certain occult lore, the Antichrist, the abode or the Antichrist originates from Iapetus, and Iapetus was once known as Saturn V. It's now designated Saturn VIII because of the discovery of some other moons, but when it was originally discovered, it was labeled as Saturn V, and there's the Saturn V rockets. NASA, the spirit of the Nazis is satanic. NASA is invested with the spirit of the Nazis, so it's satanic. And NASA is obsessed with Saturn. And it looks like they're obsessed with Iapetus, where I've heard, I don't know for sure if this is true, but I've heard that that's the abode of the Antichrist. So Dave Bowman, who was the representative or the ambassador for the Sagittarius who hate us, they want to kill most of us, or I'm sure they ought to kill all of us, but like you said, they got to keep some of us around to do the dirty work. But he went out and met his destiny at Iapetus when he went through the monolith at Iapetus, and so that's why I think it adds here, and it makes sense. In Chapter 21, Birthday Party, Hal recommends replace the AE-35, which in this is Jesus Christ here, and replace it with what? Well, Bowman is heading out, in a sense, heading out to meet the Antichrist, or to prepare the way for the Antichrist. And then Bowman transcends his physical existence, and he becomes the immortal star child, he's made to be plenipotent because he's the plenipotentiary for all mankind, for the Sagittarius. So he's given like full power, he's greatly enhanced abilities, and he comes back to planet Earth, and I guess he's going to cause a whole lot of destruction and welcome the Antichrist. That's what it seems to be. That seems to be what is going on in this novel. And so I should mention then, this would be a good way to bring up the importance of the 17th, Monday, September 17th of 2001. So you have the birthday party on the 11th. I take it as the initial day of a week of recreation for this new millennium. So the Messiah has a birthday party on the 11th and is symbolically attacked along with us, because I say those towers represent us. And as the Gemini, straight from Genesis, man and woman was made from one original flesh, and it's twin aspects of one original flesh. That's why one of the reasons I say we're the Gemini. Jesus was our ambassador. So symbolically attacked the Messiah and the Gemini on the 11th. And then on Monday the 17th, that's like an invocation of the Antichrist, because William Ramsey points out with the flight numbers that were chosen, the ritual numbers that were used, 11, 77, 93, 175, those 4 flight numbers, it all adds up to an invocation of the one that Aleister Crowley chose to represent him. He mentioned somewhere, Crowley mentioned he wanted to be the chief of staff. He wanted to be Satan's chief of staff. So the spirit that Aleister Crowley lived his life to bring about, that the spirit of the age, that spirit he lived his life to bring about, that aristocratic revolution, that new aeon he wanted. I think it looks to me like it officially arrived on Monday, September 17th, 2001, and that's when Wall Street reopened. And then that's why I thought it important enough. I noticed that when our Constitution was signed in witness whereof on September 17th, back in 1787, the Philadelphia Convention, I thought, I better pass that along, because you get a direct hit. I mean, I think it looks to me like our Constitution was, all the people who signed it, no, not necessarily, but at some level, and the person pulling their strings is ultimately Satan. These people they know who they're serving. It looks to me like the U.S. Constitution was meant to be a trap.
Yeah.
And the trap would be prepared, but years later, over 200 years later at that point, I think it was, if it wasn't sprung, it was Monday, September 17th of 2001, which is, I call it Apollo 17th. Our silence, we're 12 years into this now, and our silence, I think, is, going to come back and haunt us here. Collectively, our silence is just another one of those implied consent issues where, okay, we just, we pulled off 9/11, and then, on the 17th, next Monday, we welcomed our Messiah. We welcomed our ambassador, our anti-Messiah, and you guys, you didn't put up a fight, and, well, you get what you got. It seems to be an implied consent issue, and that's why Wall Street reopened that day. There was this. It is not at all safe. It's probably not even safe now, but it certainly wasn't safe to go back into that area then, and that place was just declared, okay, it's fit. The EPA, it's fit it's good to go. You can go back to work. And so Wall Street reopened. The opening bell rang that Monday morning of the 17th, and I can see how that day. I may not be making a great case here, but I see how that day was just an invocation of the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist.
Oh yeah. Well, you made your point about that, and I think that's very clear. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a week of recreation to mock the creation of Genesis, and it's a new age. So,
what's happened also, because of that event and what's transpired since then, at least in the national consciousness, I think what's interesting is that at a time when the government is becoming more totalitarian, the people are more acceptable of it. It's the old story, well, if it keeps me safe, then okay. But you could be locked in a padded cell. That's safe as heck. It ain't much of a life, though. And I find that happening now. That's why there's this really strange dichotomy where the more they talk about liberty and freedom, and that's the old story, that people have said, whenever you hear more yapping about liberty and freedom, you can bet that it's being stolen from you just as quickly. And that's what's happening here. And, of course, with this whole nationalistic bent that's taking place, which I think is also a psychological manipulation to get people prepared for war. And they need to hate somebody externally to leave the government alone. But I do find at this time in my life, I have never seen the government, no matter what administration, doesn't matter, it's an animal unto itself, become so despotic and the people be so accepting of it. And I was seeing that line from Gracchus, in Gladiator, where there was some nice zingers in that one. But
Yeah.
Gracchus says at the end, give them death and they will love you for it. Well, that makes sense now.
Yeah, after he'd mentioned how stupid we are,
Yeah,
I see it when he said, the beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate, it's the sand of the Colosseum.
Colosseum, that's right.
How
Very
bloodthirsty stupid we are with our pop culture. So.
No, it's the sands of the Meadowlands on February 2nd, 2014. It could be the snow, though. Yes, bread and circuses and Super Bowls and lions and tigers and bears. Oh, my. Well, it's the old story, get small, stay warm, keep moving. Because it's going to become Nazi Germany. So.
Yeah, we had a recent movie, Pontypool. What you have a little brief. Somebody on the radio mentioned some Sandy Hook's in there. So there's this recent zombie movie, Pontypool, and there's some Sandy Hook foreshadowing in it. I don't remember what year was this, 2012 or maybe it was released early last year. I don't remember for sure, but it's before December of last year, and you get this little Sandy Hook blurb. But the main reason I brought the movie up is because the front of it, the tagline is "Shut up or die," and that's a direct statement to the people who are aware of how sinister and evil this world is and how much worse it's becoming, and the people who mention it. That little tagline on that movie, we're being told to shut up or die. That's the way I see it. I mean, it seems to me we're being directly engaged there. Not directly engaged, but we're being engaged. We're being told. I mean, I can't. I guess I would need 20 hours, but all the little messages I see that are aimed at us, people like us,
Mm-hmm.
we're a small subgroup, a very small subgroup of the Gemini. We are extremely small. There aren't many people. I don't think I'm superior to others, but most people do not seem to even be. Most people don't even seem to be aware that there's much of a problem. They know that the government's corrupt, but they have no idea how evil this world is.
Well, the problem with the United States is that people know there's something wrong, but they don't realize that the government entity, no matter what party, for the most part, is in sway. It doesn't matter, but they think it's whatever's wrong is based on the other party. That's the only reason why that two-party system is still around. I mean, it's like ridiculous. I mean, as we've said, and I won't make a big deal out of it, but I mean, honestly, the agenda that's going through Obama's administration, most people would think would be that of the GOP. So it's almost like they're laughing at us because it doesn't make a difference who's there. What's going to get done is going to get done, and it's always been that way. But now, when Americans know that something isn't quite right, they just blame it on the other party.
Well, yeah, Obama was. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to unleash the end of the world on us, but I do think there's a joke being played on us deliberately, where he's an abomination who causes desolation, and he was. You just mentioned how they don't even seem to care.
No.
The Democratic, the dichotomy, the supposed dichotomy between Democrats and Republicans, don't even seem to care, and that's why his birth certificate. Have you seen his birth certificate? I got it from WhiteHouse.gov. His birth certificate was signed. The official signature was signed by someone named UKLE, and they tell us he was born in Hawaii. So there's
Ukulele?
a joke right there. Yeah.
Ukulele.
So that right there is to hell with you guys, you
That's
stupid
great.
little people.
That's
I mean,
great.
his birth certificate, the whole issue was a non-issue anyway, right? But then they made a nice little joke at us. I mean, it's when you think about it, okay, that's funny. That's a funny one. It was signed by UKLE, capital U, capital K, capital L, little e. So UKLE, and they tell us he was born in Hawaii. So ukulele.
Oh, jeez.
And I got that from WhiteHouse.gov. So
All right.
that's the official one. So.
I know. I mean, yeah, it's just so brazen now because it's two things. One, they know that most people aren't paying attention or they're just believing the party line. And secondly, it's so close, I think, to the last days of Pompeii, if you know what I mean, is that they know that nobody could step in right now and try to turn a population around. It's impossible. So it pretty much it's game set. Nobody just yelled it's match yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Clark is mocking us with this book, with his version. If it is his version, I can't say how much of Kubrick might have been in there too, but I think it's mostly Clark. His narrative script here in 2001: A Space Odyssey. He's mocking us with replacing the A-35. He's saying replace the Messiah with the anti-Messiah, and then he may even be mocking us with Iapetus as the abode of the Antichrist, because Jerome Agel was someone who wrote a fairly, I don't know how famous, but one of the primary books around 1970 of the making of the film 2001. I think his name was Jerome Agel, and I saw where he pointed out that the spelling, the way Clark spelled Iapetus, he didn't spell it I-A-P-E-T-U-S. He spelled it some other spelling that was an older spelling he called it Japetus, J-A-P-E-T-U-S. But Jerome Agel, he pointed out that why was wondering why Clark used that spelling, and he thought maybe one reason is that to jape, J-A-P-E, is to mock or to jest. I guess mock would be a better definition. I'd have to look it up again, but it's the 2001. We're being mocked with this, certainly with the book. I've read it more than once. I've been gone through it, underlining it, finding just little instance after instance where Clark he's obvious he's an elitist. It's obvious he thinks better of himself than the other people who he supposedly was speaking out for when he talked about one world and we need this for the poor people and this and that. That's very typical, but he's obviously an elitist, and he's mocking us with his book. And he's calling this book, the way he wrote it, is calling for the elimination of a whole lot of people, us, the little people, the Gemini,
okay,
as opposed to the people who are in charge, the Sagittarii. However many of them, I don't know, but go think about just what it was that John Carpenter was telling us where they live. And I'm not talking about reptilians. That's just a plot. That's just a plot element so you can distinguish between the aliens and then us. But what was John Carpenter telling us where they live?
Well, actually, it goes back to the author of the short story, which is Ray Nelson.
Yeah, I haven't read that one. I've heard of it, though. I've been told about it.
Oh, no, I mean, the short story, you can read it online by now. But, I mean, the short story, it was packed full. And from that, I mean, Carpenter ran with that. And, although he had his affectations, as all directors do, but, I asked Nelson, because I had him in an interview a couple of years ago, and I asked him, I said, so you got it? And he was like, yeah. I should put that audio back up. That was an interesting interview with Nelson. So, but I mean, that comes from, I think the name of the short story was 8 o'clock in the morning. But what a message! Isn't that amazing for him to understand that?
Yeah.
What he did.
And Clark, in this book, in the first chapter, he mentions, he's pointing out in the book how there's two separate types of people on this planet, or he distinguishes between Dave Bowman's lineage and then the others. He says here, when you first meet the others, capital O, in the first chapter, when Moonwatcher and his tribe come upon the others at the stream, Clark says there were about 30 of them, and they could not have been distinguished from the members of Moonwatcher's own tribe. I mean, forget about the aliens invading from outer space. The aliens, if you want to call them that, they're already here. They've been here. I mean, I'm not talking about reptilians and people with lizards underneath. But yes, there are. I take very seriously Genesis chapter 6, not the giants, but I don't know who the sons of God were, but they came at some point, and they mingled with
Earth women,
with the women who were from the lineage of Adam and Eve. So I don't see how I have that wrong. So we have. It looks to me like we certainly do have two distinct lineages on this planet, and the one who identified the line of people, and they're people too. They're just like us, but they consider themselves superior. And this book here, 2001, is pointing that out, that there's two different types of people on this planet, just like Orwell told us. in Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. What I hope I've done so far with these two shows is I hope I've explained well that why I say we're the Gemini, and why I say there's a group of people who identify themselves with Sagittarius who are opposed to us, and I hope I explained well the AE35. When I realized what that was, when I was reading that, and I realized what it was, and at first it goes way over your head. When I realized what that was, oh yeah. I mean, it's just another instance where the whole world is telling me that there's this fundamental spiritual battle going on this planet where you have one side and you have another, and we're coming down. Will we be alive? I don't know, but there's going to be a time in the future where there's going to be the most dichotomous decision that will ever be made will have to be made, and it's either going to be Messiah or anti-Messiah, and that's what 2001: A Space Odyssey is pointing to.
Was foreshadowing. Would you call the AE5? Would you call that a trinity of the sorts?
Yeah, there were three AE35s in the story. There's the control unit that gives the signals to the antenna, and then there's Dave Bowman is one of the AE35s because he was 35, and then the genuine AE35 is someone born in September 11th, 3 BC, and crucified in April of 33 AD. So that's 34 and a half years. If you add 9 months for conception, Jesus would have been 35 years, 3 months, right? 35 years. And that's what it looks like what's going on to me. Arthur C. Clarke was apparently a firm believer in the Messiah and the anti-Messiah.
Well, and out of that, what it comes down to is you got to serve somebody.